to find. She just has an incredible gift. Now, before Stephanie White was head coach of the Indiana Fever, she said some things like this about Caitlin Clark. The difference between the two, one actually practices what they preach. One actually, you see their words translate into actions, while the other one's words translate into crossed arms and tweaking.
A major shift may be unfolding in the WNBA, and many people may not have fully realized its significance at the time. Cheryl Reeve, the most accomplished active head coach in women's basketball, has finally addressed the ongoing Caitlin Clark discussion. But rather than criticizing Clark or downplaying the impact she has had on the league, Reeve's remarks appeared to highlight a concern that many around the WNBA have quietly shared for quite some time. The message was difficult to ignore. There is a growing belief that Stephanie White has not consistently placed Caitlin Clark in the ideal position to fully maximize the talents of one of the most gifted offensive players women's basketball has seen in recent years.
Reeves has been putting on an absolute clinic. Okay, an absolute clinic when it comes to handling a young superstar talent point guard. Okay, and everything she's been doing with Olivia Miles, it's the total opposite of what you are getting. It's the total opposite of what you are getting from Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever. And I think Cheryl Reeves has been putting on an absolute clinic and exposing.
And when someone like Cheryl Reeve speaks, people pay attention immediately. This isn't just another anonymous voice on social media or a commentator looking for headlines. This is a four-time WNBA champion coach and one of the most respected minds in women's basketball, with a resume that commands genuine respect. So when she shares her perspective on how Caitlin Clark has been utilized in Indiana, fans and analysts don't simply scroll past her comments. They stop, listen, and take notice. Because when someone with that level of experience speaks, her words carry far more weight than ordinary opinions.
Coach, a lot of times she'll say, what do you want me to look for? And I say, whatever your instincts tell you is there. I don't coach her passing at all. I try to stay out of the way of that. We try to play call to feature, some of the things that we know she's going to find. She just has an incredible gift on the instincts of who's open, when they're open, just sees it before everybody else. And so timing is so crucial. If you've got a shooter open, that by the time it touches their fingers, they can let it go. Because if you're a tick late, defender has a chance to get back to you. That shot looks different. Pick and roll game, etc. It's a gift. And that's what we talked about. It's a generational gift. You just don't see it very often. And obviously she makes things easier.
Cheryl Reeve's argument isn't complicated at all. In fact, it's remarkably simple. In her eyes, Caitlin Clark possesses a rare and clearly defined skill set. Her deep shooting range forces defenses to extend far beyond their comfort zone, while her elite court vision and exceptional basketball IQ make her one of the most dynamic playmakers in the league. The concern, according to Reeve, is that Indiana's current offensive system isn't fully built to maximize those unique strengths. During a recent press conference, she even pointed to the decision-making of her own point guard, and the contrast with Stephanie White's approach wasn't difficult to recognize. Nothing about the message felt accidental or unclear. It came across as intentional, direct, and unmistakably pointed. And for those who follow the WNBA closely, the meaning behind those comments was impossible to overlook.
This is the worst backcourt and the worst coach in the WNBA. And then the haters are so hypocritical. Let's give a brief intermission to the haters, bro. Now that I'm agreeing with the haters, they disagreeing with me, agreeing with the original point that I made. You can't make this up. All Indiana Fever fans, I just want to let y'all know. And y'all, listen, y'all don't even have to listen to me or agree with me. That's fine. But I see the writing on the wall because I've been telling y'all. You think I'm lying? Go back and look. As long as we have Stephanie White as the coach, we're going to continue to lose. As long as we got Kelsey Mitchell doing what she's doing, hogging the ball, going 7 for 21, not looking for nobody, not trying to pass, as long as she keep doing that.
When one of the most successful coaches in women's basketball history steps in front of the media and begins breaking down offensive systems while drawing clear comparisons, the conversation goes far beyond ordinary basketball analysis. It becomes something much more specific and much more deliberate. And in this particular case, the focus seems to lead back to one player and one situation, Caitlin Clark. the message wasn't subtle. It wasn't hidden between the lines. For many observers, the implications were clear. When someone with Cheryl Reeve's experience and credibility starts pointing out the differences in how elite guards are utilized, people naturally begin asking bigger questions about whether Indiana is truly putting one of the game's brightest stars in the best position to succeed.
Reeve doesn't leave her guard on an island. See Courtney back to the baseline in the gap, making sure Canada can't drive. On reversal, Olivia doubles Ryan Howard. Coffee splits the passing lane while Courtney scrambles to the corner and Olivia comes to pressure. Now, the point of this whole thing is Stephanie White wants to switch 1 through 5, which is absolute asinine when you don't have a bunch of like-sized players. You're getting 5'9" guards switched on the 6'6" centers. You're getting Aaliyah Boston stuck on 5'8" point guards at the three-point line. It's just ridiculous. And Cheryl Reeve...
Think about what that really means if Caitlin Clark is being underutilized at this stage. We're not talking about a role player being moved in and out of the rotation. We're talking about the face of the franchise. The player who keeps fans glued to their screens. The star helping sell out arenas and driving a level of attention the WNBA hasn't experienced in years. And despite all of that, she's still operating within a system that doesn't appear to fully maximize her unique abilities. In some ways, critics believe it may even be restricting them. That's not just a matter of making a few adjustments or tweaking a couple of plays. It points to something much larger. A deeper structural issue involving how the offense is being built around one of the most gifted players the league has seen in a long time. And if that concern is valid, the implications go far beyond a single game or a single season. It raises serious questions about whether Indiana is truly getting the most out of its biggest star.
Cheryl Reeve's statements and that post-game presser that aided in her suspension. Yeah.
I mean, I think that she made a lot of valid points. A lot of the same kind of conversations are happening. It's happening from every team, from every franchise, from every coach, from every player. And I think at some point there has to be some...
Here's the part that makes Cheryl Reeve's comments hit even harder. Reeve and Stephanie White aren't strangers, and they definitely aren't longtime rivals throwing public shots at each other. In fact, their history goes the opposite way. Back in September 2025, White actually stood up for Reeve after she was suspended and fined $15,000 following her heated comments about officiating during the WNBA playoffs. White publicly supported her, even admitting she had been fined herself for backing Reeve, calling the situation outrageous and firmly defending her stance. And the key thing is, she didn't have to do any of that. No pressure, no obligation. Just respect, agreement, and solidarity with what Reeve was saying at the time. That's what makes the current situation so significant. Because when someone who once defended you publicly, even at a personal cost, starts questioning your coaching approach later on, it carries a very different kind of weight. This isn't outside noise or rivalry chatter. This is someone who knows you, has supported you, and is now essentially saying, something here doesn't feel right. And that kind of criticism lands much harder than anything from the outside ever could.
We're not best utilizing Aaliyah Boston's skill set being the roller. We're running ISO with Kelsey Mitchell. We're running ISO with Caitlin Clark. We're not setting her any screens. We're not setting her any off-ball screens. And defensively, switching everything. Oh, wow, we had one good game where we didn't switch everything. Wow. Color me shocked. Cheryl Reeve came out in a press conference and heaped praise upon Olivia Miles. Said, nah, just let her play. I trust my point guard's instinct. I trust my point guard's decision-making. While you have Stephanie White...
The film tells the story without needing much explanation. Whenever Caitlin Clark is given space to operate, when there's movement around her, off-ball screens, and the freedom to shoot off the catch or off the dribble, she becomes almost impossible to contain. We saw it at Iowa. We saw it during her rookie year in Indiana, when the offense flowed more naturally and she was trusted to control the game. The production spoke for itself. But this season, if you've been paying attention, something feels different. Clark isn't playing with quite the same rhythm. Too many possessions are being run inside a structure that doesn't fully match how she plays. The off-ball movement that once created those tiny windows of separation, the split second she thrives on, just isn't there as consistently. And for a player whose entire game is built on creating advantage out of even the smallest pocket of space, that fraction of a second changes everything. Cheryl Reeve has noticed it. She's coached against Clark, studied the film, and understands, as a 4-time championship coach, that what's happening in Indiana doesn't look like a simple slump. It looks more like a system that hasn't fully been shaped to unlock what Caitlin Clark does best.
Everybody had something to say over the weekend because of the huddle with Caitlin, Stephanie White. We've got Twitter just going out. Everybody's losing their mind. You were there. What happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just there's frustration. I think we noticed they were trying to pick on Caitlin a little bit on defensive end. She was getting called for some fouls that, fouls aren't fun. She got in some foul trouble. Our team got into some foul trouble, and that's just all it was. I think that's part of the game. There's frustrations that rise, and decisions have to be made. And ultimately, this wasn't something that carried on. This is in the moment, something that happened, and not something that is talked about now in our locker room, talked about even later on in the game. That's just something that happened. And unfortunately, Caitlin's got a camera on her 24/7. And so you see every little thing, but this happens almost every day in women's basketball. So not something that we're worried about.
We've already seen flashes of that tension spill over onto the broadcast. That sideline moment said a lot without needing much explanation. Caitlin Clark looked visibly frustrated. Stephanie White was actively gesturing and directing traffic. Raven Johnson briefly slid into Clark's space, and Kelsey Mitchell stepped in to calm things down. It wasn't chaotic, but it also wasn't nothing. After the game, both Clark and White went to the podium and delivered the usual polished, carefully worded responses. White brushed it off, saying it wasn't a story. Clark framed it as just two competitive people trying to win. And realistically, that's exactly what you'd expect in public. No coach or player is going to escalate something like that openly. But when both sides feel the need to strongly emphasize that there's no issue, it naturally raises the question of what's being left unsaid. Because moments like that rarely come out of nowhere. What it really pointed to wasn't just personality friction, it hinted at something deeper, a disconnect in basketball vision. Clark plays with a very clear understanding of what puts her in rhythm. She knows her timing, her spacing, and the situations where she thrives. So when the game plan or in-game adjustments drift away from that, the frustration becomes visible. It showed on the bench. It showed in real time on camera. And now, that same underlying tension is starting to spill into the broader conversation around the league.
The point guard makes a turnover, she's quick to yank. The point guard gets 3 quick assists, she's quick to yank. The point guard makes 3 straight threes, she's quick to yank. While Cheryl Reeve is saying, play your game, play. Sounds like a player who's gotten the green light from their coach. Hey, play your game. You'll turn it over, it's okay. You'll turn it over, it's okay. And Olivia Miles like, I don't want to turn it over. I don't want to turn it over because my teammates don't like it, but hey, if it happens, it happens. But I'm not going to think about it all the damn time, because the more I think about it, it's going to happen. Meanwhile, Stephanie White is just jamming it into Caitlin Clark's head. Don't turn it over, 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 up, yank.
Let's be very clear about this. Cheryl Reeve didn't accidentally drift into this discussion. This wasn't a slip of the tongue, and it wasn't a reporter catching her off guard. Reeve is one of the most disciplined, detail-oriented minds in the game. Nothing she says at a podium is random. Every word is intentional. So when she drew a comparison between her own offensive system, specifically the trust she places in her point guard's decision-making, and what she's observing in Indiana, that wasn't an offhand remark. It was a message, and it was meant to land. Across the WNBA, it clearly has. What makes it even more significant is the relationship history behind it. Reeve and Stephanie White aren't strangers with bad blood. There's mutual respect there, even public support in the past. White standing up for Reeve during her 2025 suspension is a clear example. That kind of history matters, which is exactly why this moment stands out. Because Reeve isn't speaking from a place of personal conflict or rivalry. If anything, that prior support would have only strengthened the respect between them. So for her to still raise concerns about how Caitlin Clark is being utilized says something important. From her perspective, what she's seeing on the floor is significant enough that even respect and shared history don't override it. At the center of her message, though, the focus stays consistent. It's not about personalities, it's about basketball. And the takeaway she leaves hanging over the league is hard to ignore. Caitlin Clark needs to be put in a position that fully reflects what she brings to the game.
They're pushing you around and you just take it. Why? The one person that has the most power in the league uses none of it. We need to start, in every aspect of life, there are people that when other people say their name, people get scared. They start shaking in their boots. And when we talk about the WNBA, people need to start being scared to say your name. People need to know that when they say certain things or do certain things and it's involving you, that stuff may go wrong. And it's just, coming from you, it's just a bunch of go along, get along. You trying to go along, get along with people that ain't trying to get along.
Step back for a second and look at the full picture, because this isn't just about a player and a coach going through growing pains. Caitlin Clark is one of the biggest commercial forces the WNBA has ever seen. The numbers speak for themselves. Ratings climb whenever she plays. Arenas fill up, merchandise demand rises, and social media activity spikes the moment she steps on the floor. By nearly every measurable standard, she has become one of the most valuable figures in the league, not only because of her production as a basketball player, but because of what she represents for the growth, visibility, and long-term future of the WNBA. And right now, that level of impact is being shown at less than full capacity. Not because of injury, not because of decline. She's still early in her career, but because the system she's operating in doesn't consistently highlight what makes her unique. Instead, at times, it mutes parts of her game rather than amplifying them. That creates an issue for Indiana, but it also extends beyond just one team. When a player with this level of influence isn't operating at her peak, the league as a whole feels it. Every game where she's held below her potential becomes a missed opportunity, not just for Indiana, but for one of the WNBA's biggest ongoing storylines. Cheryl Reeve understands that context. Her comments aren't rooted in rivalry or criticism for its own sake. They reflect a deeper understanding of the sport and what's at stake when a generational talent isn't placed in the optimal environment to thrive.